producer, co-host extraordinaire, Stacey.
Stop. Hey, how do you want us to install this water heater? And then my coworker was like, I don't know, install the water heater. Like, why are you even asking me? He's like, well, I don't know if you know, but what you designed, it can't physically fit through the front door of this building.
My class is only 40 minutes. So we have to get this done in 40 minutes. You have to clean up in 40 minutes. And then it also, when you use the miter saw, a lot of kids are scared of the miter saw, and you just see the difference in their confidence when they come in here compared to when they leave. They're excited.
Be announcing a new county that's going to join us in Maryland, so we continue to spread it. And I'll say my peers across the country are starting to take this and adopt this at their local IEC chapters.
Either AI assistant tools, you have AI master builder tools, and then you have kind of a bit of both that are 1 foot in BIM, in current processes, and 1 foot in AI.
Said, Brett, in life, opportunity meets you at your level of preparation.
She said, here's the keys, go forth and do great things.
It's morning huddle time. Stacey, how are you this morning? Chad Fricke here with Stacey Holzinger. How are you, Stacey?
I'm doing good. It's cold here. We got it 4 inches where we're at, so
mind-boggling 4 inches. I was talking to
no, it's been a while.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, it's for me so nice to have some winter weather in winter, which we've been missing for the past 2 years.
I know.
In at least in the Mid-Atlantic. It depends on where you are in the country, right? But here, I know in certain swaths of the East Coast, it's been very little winter weather over the past couple of years. One of my longest standing and closest relationships is a contractor that bases a lot of their business on snow removal.
Mm-hmm.
It's been brutal. Past 2 years has been brutal. I was texting with one of the guys last night. I was like, hey man, let it snow. And he goes, it can't snow enough. Just keep going. Just keep going. It's really good for business. Really pretty. I enjoy it. So,
but in Maryland, they still have to sign the contracts just to prepare for just in case for the year, right? Is that
so it depends on like the type of contract. So there are some contracts where like I know a lot of municipal contracts where they'd sign, like you said, just in case, where they're signing basically like a guaranteed amount so that they have this focused on call kind of snow removal service. Then there's a whole there that you can also sign up for as needed snow removal. So I was talking to somebody yesterday, business owner that has a property that, has a lot of parking lot. And he said, I think last year I wrote a grand total of $1,000 for snow removal, and so, he has an option that, in a year where we get nailed with snow, maybe he ends up writing $110,000 for snow removal. And he could maybe write a flat check for $60,000 that never changes.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Right. There's those kinds of options. And, in that business, it's a fascinating gig. And a lot of contractors I know rely on, throwing those, plows on the front of the trucks and using their machines that they're normally using for excavation or whatever else to move snow. It's a great way to turn it into money. And I hope that we have a lot of listeners who are catching this on recording instead of live because they're out there moving the snow. So that'd be a good thing for business overall. So we've got 4 inches of snow here. I don't know what the weather is like in Kentucky, but I do know that today's guest has not made it on the show. And that's, I was talking with Stacey and I are really stressing. We're like starting late. We're man, we're trying to give Scott some time to make it on. He's a really smart guy. He's got a ton to add. And, Stacey's like, this sucks. What's going to happen? I said, you know what? In 64 episodes, it's never happened once. It was bound to happen, Stacey.
And you had a great prep call with him. So I hope he's okay. I mean, there's probably a ton going on across the country with this weather.
Whether it's weather or whether it's life or whether it's just human error, either way, Scott's a good guy. We'll cut Scott some slack, even though he's not going to be here today to talk about construction scheduling. I do want to pass along some of the thoughts that he and I were talking about just at the outset. And then, Stacy, if it's cool with you, I'd like to just have more of like a Stacy and Chad discussion for the remainder of the show, which could get really weird. It can get strange. So I'm gonna, but first, I will. I want to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that Scott and I were batting around. So the big question about construction scheduling is, when is construction scheduling just an exercise? And I think a lot of the trade contractors that I work with have somebody who's a scheduling consultant. That when do they call the scheduling consultant? It's when they have to prove a point. It's when they have to try to secure a delay claim. It's when they have to try to convince their customer that that they're off schedule. And
is it explaining the why they're off schedule?
Yeah, it's explaining the why they're off schedule, and it's having a professional put together something really, convincing, really, that proves a point, that says, hey, this is what we should have been doing, and this is what you did to us, and this is how that has cost ramifications, cost impacts, and this is why we're passing along a delay claim, and making sure that they get paid for it. I'm not suggesting I'm not suggesting at all that is inappropriate or not a reasonable business decision when you need to. But I think what Scott would be saying if he were with us, and what I believe as well, is that scheduling shouldn't be something that you're just doing when things have gotten sideways, but you really should be taking a systematic, extremely thorough approach to scheduling from the outset, and doing an awesome job communicating your schedule to your customer, whether you're a trade contractor or a general contractor, communicating your schedule to your customer and making sure way before anything has gotten off track, people understand all the things that need to happen to keep the job on track. And when you do that, so if I say to you, Stacy, okay, I'm planning to do A, then B, then C. This is how I'm going to do it. These are the different things that need to be in place for me to do it. Now, Stacy, as my customer, I can't start B until you've got X, Y, and Z completed. If you don't have X, Y, and Z completed, I cannot start phase B. So please let me know when you have X, Y, and Z completed. Otherwise, I'm not going to be mobilizing to start B. And if, just as a side note, if we can't mobilize to start B by April, here's what that does to my manpower, and we've got to go here and we've got to go there, just so that you're aware up front. These are the kinds of conversations that nobody's having,
right?
That people aren't having thoroughly enough because everybody's too busy. Everybody's way too busy to have these types of conversations. But the truth is, if they slow down, like I probably shouldn't talking right now, if they slowed down and have these conversations up front as a habit, they'd actually be a little bit less busy putting out fires that could have been prevented with thorough planning. Right?
How often are people meeting? I know they prepare like the 2-week, 3-week look ahead. Do you know how
so there's a difference between this the term CPM schedule is a kind of like, and our good friend Mark Drury actually is somebody who could talk about this until the cows come home. Mark and I could if we could just pull Mark on right now, we could talk to him about this for about 2 hours. But the CPM schedule is the critical path schedule, and the critical path is the whole picture that shows essentially what the benchmarks, the milestones are along the way, and how a job must flow if it's going to meet end schedule. So there are certain aspects of construction that are on the quote unquote critical path. And there are other aspects of construction that are oftentimes not on the critical path. So for example, like we've got to have all of the concrete poured for, all the foundation in place for any of the conduit to be running into the building. I can't run my conduit into the building until there's actually a foundation to run my conduit into. So that foundation is on the critical path. But where on the other side, maybe sidewalks, for example, is something, or in general, site concrete may not be on the critical path until, very end of the schedule, if at all. So because they don't really impact other trades, coming in to do their thing. Point is this: there's this broad CPM schedule that is, I think, in too many cases, BS. It's not a real schedule. People aren't actually managing it. They're not actually living on that schedule. And instead, what starts to happen is everybody just falls into this 2-week look ahead, 3-week look ahead pattern. And imagine this happens, right? Like we start at the beginning, Stacy, and we say, hey, we're going to finish this by December. And here's the critical path to do that. At the beginning, we build this really beautiful plan.
Right.
That's scheduling, right? And it's good. And GCs do that at the outset. Most trade contractors should, most don't, honestly, do it at that level at the outset, which is crazy to me. But they should do that at the outset. But then I notice I repeat this term outset. What ends up happening is they don't stick to it. So now all we do is we get together and we talk about 2 weeks at a time. And it seems like a really good concept, but if we don't put 2 weeks at a time in context with the CPM schedule, we're going to find that we're not done in December. We're going to find that we're done in March.
So we're not looking at the big picture enough.
Correct. Yeah. And we're not also being honest about the real big picture and the impacts that that's having to everybody performing the work. So does that make sense? So like I was planning as a trade contractor, I was planning to be out here on this job. I priced it to be out here on this job for one mobilization. In other words, one time getting all my manpower out on that job. And I was planning to be out on this job for 6 weeks, one mobilization, 6 weeks. That's how I priced it. And I priced it that way to be aggressive, to make sure that I could both, meet your budget expectations as the customer and make some money, because I have to. Otherwise, what the hell am I doing in business as a business owner? And so I priced it that way. Now you as the customer have said, well, we're going to do this piece and then we're going to have you back later. So now that's not one mobilization, that's 2 mobilizations. And now not only are you saying I'm going to have you come back later, but when I come back later, it's not ready. So not only do I mobilize a second time, but I actually have to pull all my guys off the job again and come back to you when it's actually ready. All said, I didn't spend 6 weeks on the project. I spent 11 weeks on the project. And the point is this: we all need to be more honest with each other through that whole process about cost impacts when you do that. And we need to do a way better job of actually managing the critical path. Right. And making sure that things stay on track so that we don't end up breaking the original plan. That's the message. And Scott has a whole bunch of, one of the things that we talked about.
You mentioned anything about unforeseen conditions and how that affects the schedule and how to better communicate, when things get interrupted and you don't see them coming once you get started with the construction process?
Yeah, I think that goes to 2 different things. One is contingency planning. And there's always unforeseen conditions is always a funny topic for me. I do a lot of project partnering where I work with project teams with the owner and the general contractor and the trade contracting community and the architect and the design community, like all that stuff. I'll get like 30 people in a room and at the outset of a project and talk about relationship and trust and all that. But I'll also talk about the project and make sure everybody's, talking about. And unforeseen conditions always cracks me up because it's like they're unforeseen conditions, but we kind of know where they're going to happen if they're going to happen. The most common place for it to happen is in the dirt. It's in the site work on a base building project because oftentimes you don't know what you're going to find until you start digging.
So do you have some time in your schedule for unforeseen? Okay.
Yeah, so that's called float. So you have the critical path. And we're starting today and we're supposed to finish in December. And if we're smart, we're going to build in some float, but not just generalized float. Like, let's just add 20% float. But we're going to float is basically the wiggle room where we can go off of the critical path. And if we can build in float for in particular around the site, for example, and then maybe on long lead time items like a switch gear, we might be building in a little bit of float for what happens if the switch gear gets delayed, or what happens if we can't get key components of the building in place in time. So now that real CPM schedule that goes through December included a little bit of reasonable float wiggle room based on foreseeable unforeseen conditions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is float determined based on each trade? Like, does the mechanical trade give a different timeline for float as the electrical contractor, or is it just in general of the entire project?
So I'm not a scheduling professional, Stacy, even though I have this way of sounding really confident about shit I have no business sounding confident about. But no, I'm not a scheduling professional, but I'll share with you what I've seen and heard.
Okay.
And not necessarily like what's right or wrong.
Right.
I have heard people talk about evaluating the foreseeable challenges trade by trade on a particular project, the specifics about that project. Hey, it's a tight site. It's going to be very difficult for us to get the large equipment in, and we may have some challenges with that. This, mechanical schedule that we have for 340 days, we should probably build in some float into the mechanical schedule as we navigate getting equipment into this building and, getting permits from the city to shut down streets when we have to, put massive rooftop units on this or whatever it is. Right. Yeah. I've heard people talk about that being the most scientific way to create that. But I also believe that from an owner's perspective, if I'm an owner, look, man, I told you I wanted it done by December, figure it out is a part of the answer too.
Right. I've heard that. Yes.
Right. And so I think it's always a balancing act, but to the extent possible, what I try to do, and now I'll speak to stuff I can actually, I'm an expert in, or at least to some degree. What I try to do is pull the owner together with the GC, with the design community, with the trade contracting community, to have honest conversations together, so that the owner isn't sitting on a perch demanding things that aren't possible from a general contractor, who then passes those unreasonable demands down to the subcontracting community, who then in turn are angry at and potentially go to war with this general contractor, and that bubbles back up to problems for the owner. Nobody wins in that scenario. So I think bringing it back to the concept of scheduling and how scheduling helps with all of that, it really is just an exercise in brutal honesty with each other if we're doing it right, both from the start and all the way through construction. And there should be accountability. Everybody is so focused on making sure they don't end up holding the financial bag. And you know what? Sometimes, dude, you gotta own the financial bag. It's your problem, and you're not going to make money on this job, or you should be losing money on this job because you did screw it up. And I think if everybody stays so focused on protecting themselves, it's where it creates the dishonesty in the system.
Right. Yeah. Dennis had a comment here. I'll read it. Where we have problems is the P6 schedule is the baseline and contracts. When the project starts, we do pull planning, and sometimes it can pull the projects to the left. The fight is always the sub stands on the P6 schedule. It's hard to get them to understand that we're not increasing the duration, just starting sooner.
I love that. So some subcontractors will take this to the extreme, where what I'm talking about, like, hey, you gotta communicate your schedule expectations and make sure that the general contractor knows this is how we planned it, this is how we need to show up, and this is how we need to build it in order to be financially secure. Otherwise, there's going to be cost impacts for you. When he's talking about P6, it's Primavera's the known scheduling, the top scheduling software in the market. And so the general contractor puts together this Primavera schedule, the CPM schedule, the critical path schedule that I mentioned, that I referenced. And the thought process is, hey, if your plan was 6 weeks and 1 mobilization in March, if we're kicking ass and we happen to want you in January, that's not a cost impact to you. If we're still 1 mobilization in 6 weeks. Now, what I'd say to Dennis, who, by the way, Dennis, thank you so much for being a contributor and an ongoing audience member. We love having you here. But what I'd say to Dennis is that probably the thing that's going unspoken in all of that is just the overall manpower planning status for the trade contractor, where they're like, yeah, but I'm on another job in January, and I was really planning to start this one in March. And that's not Dennis's problem. That's not the general contractor's problem. But I do think if we can create an environment where everybody can just be honest about those things, we can collaborate. And Dennis can say, okay, cool. Look, I'm not going to force you to do something that you can't do in your business or that's going to blow the wheels off, but can we work on, can we collaborate? Can we work on this together? Can we find a middle ground? Can I get you to get this and this started in January, which will help the process, because look, it's not my, you don't get to have a claim because I wanted you in January instead of March. That's not fair. You don't get to have a claim for that.
Don't make demands, but rather maybe suggest and give and take type of situation when things.
Yeah, that's right. And my point is that if that sub is honest and says, look, I've got 120 field staff. I've got 90 of them committed to another job that ends at the end of January. I really can't start in the middle of January, following my plan. If that sub can just be that candid, then the general contractor can easily communicate back with them and say, okay, cool, thank you. One part of me, I'm bummed out about that. Another part of me just says, like, what can we get started in the middle of January? And I think if that subcontractor, general contractor communication is friendly, courteous, and also at a high enough level, right? Because if you're having this conversation with somebody who doesn't actually get manpower decisions,
right,
they're just going to tell you no.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the ability to say yes. Then I think what you're going to find is, people who are willing and actually on some level interested in expediting the like everybody wins if we get off the job faster. That doesn't hurt anybody. It just, like I say, that subcontractor, if they're complaining about starting sooner and pointing at the P6 schedule, what's probably happening is that they planned it to fit this perfect little box that started in March, and you're screwing it up.
I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but if the GC is ahead of the schedule, when do you bring in a scheduling consultant? Do you know?
So this is what I was referencing at the outset, Stacy, where I think what I've seen is usually when you engage a scheduling consultant, it's when things have gone sideways and you're trying to make a legal case. And that's the wrong time to do it, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I understand, and it's a smart business decision to do when you have to do it. But my point is, I think, and Scott's point would be, bring in a scheduling consultant from the outset. Bring in a scheduling consultant to help to build the plan in, like I said, that brutally honest way from the outset, and let's build something that is as realistic and stick-toable as humanly possible.
But they also serve as like a mediator if, the GC and the owner and the subs all see different, things in the schedule, and the consultant can kind of ground them and say, let's try this. And this is why, or no?
I'm going to say I have 3 answers to that question. 1, I haven't seen it. 2, I know people who say they would. And so I don't think that they wouldn't. I'm just saying I haven't seen it. Usually that's not the role they play. And 3 is what they, more often they're in expert witness situations. Meaning it's already gone to, it's already gone down the tubes, and they're serving as expert witnesses to, to prove one point or the other.
Yeah.
It's an example of dealing later with the mess that we could have prevented earlier. And let's be clear, having an awesome schedule does not make sure that the job is perfect, but it's one aspect, I think, of having a as perfect a job as you can create, is having a very realistic schedule. And I think also, all right, so let's put this on the table. Here's this reality. That the general contractor's schedule with the owner has in most contracting methods, not all, but in most delivery methods, has a significant impact on what the on what the general contractor will make.
Mm-hmm.
So the easiest way to describe this to the audience very quickly, and a lot of the audience is going to roll their eyes and be like, dude, we know this, but I'm still going to say it anyway, is that for a general contractor, there's this concept called general conditions. And general conditions, basic in basic terms, is the direct resources that the general contractor has on the project, such as the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the project manager, the assistant project manager, the project engineer, the job site trailer, the dumpsters, all these different things that fit into this bucket of like, these are the costs we have to run your job.
Mm-hmm.
In many, not all, and again, I'm not going to, different topic, different day, where we can talk about general contract, delivery methods versus CM delivery methods and all the nuances between those two things. But I'll just simply say that for a general contractor, those are their hard costs. And they have a limit to how much of those they can collect. And that limit is set by the schedule. So let's pretend, like as a general contractor, my general conditions on a job are $100,000 a month for round numbers. I've got a schedule of 12 months. That means I've got $1.2 million of general conditions to spend on covering my own costs during the course of construction. If the job goes 15 months, I'm out 300 grand in general conditions unless I have a delay claim that I can prove the owner slowed me down. If, on the other hand, I can get the job done sooner by 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
I get to put $300,000 of found profit in my pocket.
Mm.
Therefore, as a general contractor, it behooves me to set a schedule with my owner that is as long as possible, right? That's as long as possible, that I can get him to go to contract for the longest duration possible, and then work my butt off to get the job done sooner than I told him I would get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where my profit is on the job, is actually in reclaiming my general conditions and not having to spend money that I planned to spend. And I think the reality of the situation is this. General contractors require the deep assistance of subs to help them to accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
Right? They require the assistance of subs to help them to accomplish that goal. And usually, look both ways, there's nothing in it for the subs.
Yeah.
So if there's a bunch of money in it for the general contractor and nothing in it for the subs, I think a part of the game,
motivated.
Correct. I think a part of the game is, how do I motivate a subcontractor,
right,
to want to help me, to move faster. And I'll leave it at that. I think that's again, different topic, different day. We could talk about accelerating subcontractors and performance incentives and
the substantial completion date or the schedule. I never.
So it's the CPM schedules through substantial completion.
Okay.
So and then everything past substantial completion is
that like checking off your
punch? It's mostly punch list stuff. Yeah, it's mostly and punch can be, again, holy smokes. I think we just identified 5 new shows that we need to do. We should do a whole show on punch list, Stacy.
Is that quality control? Is that what you're talking about there? Or are you talking about, or there's some big items that get pushed to the punch list?
Ah,
Oh,
yeah, I think what a part of what happens is like the punch list isn't a punch list. You know, when the punch list
Is that a
is
gray area
it
sometimes?
can be. Yeah, it can be.
Okay.
It can be. It shouldn't be. It's not there. There's there are controls in place theoretically to keep it from being, but it oftentimes
And shouldn't
turns
you
into
be
it.
able technically to move in the building during substantial completion while the punch list is going on, or no? Or you're not sure? I don't know.
Yes, and it depends. I mean, and again, this would go to me not being a full, an expert and all that. But I know that would vary by application. There are probably some situations where they wouldn't move in until punch is complete. It all depends on who they is and what the
I was
circumstances
just
are.
thinking maybe like if you had a school deadline and the kids had to be in for school, they would be okay with, like
Right.
minor stuff like pops in the wall or something.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Though, schools are a really good example of need to be in the space
Mhm.
versus maybe let's say like a corporate move where if you're telling me it's going to be another month before you're done with your punch, I might renew my lease I might do a 1 month
Yeah.
extension on my lease in my existing space until my new space is all the way ready.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I might make those decisions, but anyway, fun discussion and one that I really, again, I thank Scott for having primed the pump for
Mhm.
some of the discussion today. Genuinely wish that he had been able to be here, but I think that's part of it. I do want to, and I got knocked a little off my normal game, folks. I did way more talking than I normally do, but I guess that was the way it was supposed to be today. Just the way
Life happens.
yeah, the way fate has it. Put
Yeah.
it that way. But I do want to take a moment to recognize our sponsors and thank our sponsors for helping us to spread the word and expand the audience for the Morning Huddle. The first sponsor that I'll thank is the Marsh McLennan Agency. Marsh McLennan Agency is an insurance agent and bonding agent nationwide, focused on the middle market, which I think is a lot of our audience, and they just do a fantastic job at providing a customer experience and level of expertise and strategy. So, do reach out to your local Marsh McLennan Agency for that support. Next is Sandy Spring Bank, which is my bank and good
My
friends of
bank
mine.
too.
It's yours too?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's my business bank. It's not my personal bank. I don't. There's
I
no
do
branches
everything
near
with
me.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, they're awesome people. They definitely think like your business partner when it comes to your banking needs. And I've always found that my points of contact over there are ready and willing to help same day
Mhm.
hours response. They're fantastic. Next is Lawrence Law. Kate Lawrence and her team focus on the construction industry, do a great job of all manner of legal aspects, whether you um, or have a delay claim, and you need a legal representation,
Right.
or just your everyday contract reviews. She and her team are super customer focused and do a great job. I know a lot of their customers, and they're very happy with Lawrence. So please reach out to Lawrence Law. And then lastly, from an accounting firm, we have Katz Abosch, which is a Baltimore, D.C. focused accounting firm that does specialize in the construction industry. They have a handful of people on staff that I've developed relationships with and can personally speak to their expertise in construction, whether you're doing succession planning or just your average sort of tax and audit. They're great with everything from the nuts and bolts to the consulting and strategy piece specific for construction firms. So do reach out to Katz Abosch. All right, good. Stacy, what do you think? Do we have any other questions?
No, that's it for that, but I did want to talk about next week. So I'm excited for this discussion because obviously it's my topic. We're going to talk about 2024 marketing strategies. You know, marketing changes so frequently, especially with AI and everything. So we have Matt Graves joining us from Construction Yeti. He has a really great newsletter called Construction Curiosities that comes out weekly. He also has a great following on Instagram. He'll talk to you about. And then I have Jonathan Core coming on, and he does strictly social media. We have a lot of overlap, but I love his posts. I've been talking to him and following him for quite a while, and he's pretty dead on with some of his social strategies. So he'll tell you about that. And then I think I'll cover some out of the box marketing strategies that I've seen and, you know, where the construction industry is headed for this next year. So we're excited for that one.
Awesome. Awesome. Yep. All right, good. Yeah, next week, if this week was me doing a lot of talking, next week will be you doing a lot of talking, Stacy.
Oh my God.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. We're all talkers, we're marketing professionals. So
I'll be taking notes. No doubt about it.
All right.
Well, thank you for helping me to roll with this today, Stacy. I was glad to actually be able to hopefully add value in the intended content that we had planned. So yeah, thank you for helping to interview me through that process. That was kind of you.
I'll follow up with Scott and I'll see if we can do some tips in the recap of this and figure out what we missed. So you can check out for an email for that. And hopefully we can get him rescheduled because I think this is an important discussion. So
it is. All right. Well, all the best. Stacy, have a great week. We'll see you next week.
So see ya.
See y'all.